you think you might have a book in you? I'll bet Ben can tell you exactly how to get that done and get it published and use it the right way. So let's bring Ben on and give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Timon. It's really a pleasure, and I'm glad we had this opportunity. I'm so glad you're doing the summit, and you've brought some amazing speakers into the mix. I mean, I've been checking people out over the weekend, and as we were coming up to the summit, it's been great. So many places to start, right? And I know that this is the end of the summit, and I know that I get to the end of the summit, and my brain is a little toasty. So just really invite you all, whether you're catching this live or in recording, to just know that you've been doing great for being here and learning and expanding, and really giving yourself the gift of what you need to do for your business and for the impact you want to make. I mean, that's so incredible and so powerful, and it does pay off. Sometimes, it takes a minute and a half to recognize how is it paying off, but it does pay off.
Yes, yes, you're right.
Take it from me, and Dumont, your whole, the fact that you help people in these amazing ways with LinkedIn. I had shared my story with you probably several times at this point, right? LinkedIn's been huge for me. As an author, and as an author who's using my book, or books, I should say, to attract clients, to develop strategic partnerships, all that kind of stuff. And my favorite story about all of that is, several years ago, I was asked to speak at Stanford University. And this was because somebody found me on LinkedIn, right? And they saw my book.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And excuse me, and it was really fun because, this was a point in my business where I was really, really struggling, and I hadn't quite found my rhythm yet. And, so, anybody who's listening, watching this right now, and if you're like, how long is this going to take? I don't know, right? I wonder that for myself sometimes, but it's worth it to keep going. Right? Even when you don't think it is. I mean, there have been times where I'm like, I just want to stop. I just want to quit and drive a bus in San Francisco, right? And smile at people and welcome them aboard, right? And then I'm like, no, there are people who need my help, and I can help them. And this really became evident with this opportunity at Stanford, because it was a coup, as they say. Suddenly somebody reached out and they're like, hey, we saw your book, and do you want to come speak? And I went, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And we worked out all the details, and then I said to the event planner, and I had learned this from a coach of mine a couple years before. I said, hey, I'd love to make this speaking event really special for your people. I'm going to show up with autographed copies of my brand new book for everyone in the audience as well as your staff, and this is like 130 books. And the event planner's like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's really, really special and wonderful. And these people, the people in the audience, they had been to Twitter and actually to the LinkedIn offices right here in Silicon Valley, and they had been into Google. So they're taking kind of this tour of all this stuff, and then getting to me, and I'm like, okay, I really gotta, I gotta make this memorable. So I promised the books, hang up the phone, and I went, oh no, I have to write that book right now. Yes, because I had promised books that I hadn't written.
Oh no.
Yes, thank you. And it gets better, because from the date of the promise to the event, 6.5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. I'm like.
Yeah. So and fortunately I had written one book already, so I knew sort of what I was doing, and I had a model to work with, right? Very important. Like, once you write the first book, it's so much easier to write all the other books, right? Just keep following the model, right? Just like any of these kinds of things. And, like Dumont, you teach, keep following the model, the process, whatever language. And so I frantically put the book together, expedited the shipping, the whole deal, showed up with books, and the event was amazing. The event planning company hired me for several more gigs. The audience hired me to come speak at their headquarters in Sydney, Australia the following year, which was super cool, right?
Yeah.
Really. And then a kind of fast or backing up a little bit to, when I was frantically writing the book, I had somebody design a digital 3D cover of the book, right? And
Cool.
everybody who's watching, listening, you can do this too, right? As soon as you are going to write a book, even if you don't know the title, even if you're just like, I think the book is about asparagus or whatever it is, start telling people that you're the author of a forthcoming book, because the perception about you will change immediately. Right? So even if you're like, I want to write a book, I have no idea what it is, but I know this much, start leveraging that right away. Really, really powerful.
I'm working on a book on such and such.
Yes, exactly right
I
there.
like that.
Yeah, and it's books are such a great reason for people to have conversations, because it's like, hey, right, Audrey, perfect, exactly. I'm the author of a forthcoming book. You're already doing it. Audrey, great job.
Yeah, Audrey, give us the name of the book so we can go look for it.
Exactly. So I had gotten, this is something you can do as well. I had gotten a digital 3D cover of the book done. I put it up on LinkedIn, and I said, look, I'm writing my book, hooray, exactly what I'm saying to you right now. And somebody reached out to me, and they're like, hey, we're creating a mindfulness and empathy video game with a Fortune 100 company and MIT, and it's going to be played by 20,000 employees. Do you want to write the curriculum? And I went, of course I want to write the curriculum, I think. Sure. Right? Not that I had ever written a curriculum before or since, but there was enough of what they saw of the book that they're like, let's talk to this person, and that turned into 10 months of consulting with a Fortune 100 company. Yeah. And it took me 2 years. So the fast writing of the book for Stanford and then the Fortune 100 company, 2 years later, all of a sudden I went, oh, I can teach this, right? I can teach people to write a high quality book really fast, right? Have a manuscript in as little as 5 weeks. Right? I can teach people how to leverage the book before it's published, right? And just make use of it, and let me turn this into a business. So that's how I built my business. And it did all start with the book, because I had years of lean entrepreneurial living, shall we say?
Yes, I've been there.
Yeah, I think many of us, if not all of us, have. Doing some catering, all these kinds of things. I mean, really, just you do what you got to do.
That's right.
And just the book was so pivotal and so powerful. And it's interesting, because there are a lot of times I'll hear people like, oh well, people don't read books anymore. People just watch video or listen to audio or social media, and books are dead and all those kinds of things. And maybe to some people they are. I can't speak for everyone, right? I would never presume to, but books are one of the oldest forms of communication for human beings, right? I mean, they've been around for a long time, and they have this, this legendary kind of mythic aspect to them. Oh, you wrote a book, you must know something. Wow, right?
Yeah, it imparts knowledge, expertise.
It really does. And there's this funny story of, a woman who had written a book quite a few years ago, and it was like the complete guide to everything that men know about women, right? And you buy the book and it's completely blank. Right? And she made like $1 million from that book. Right? And now I'm not recommending that anybody write a blank book. No, we're not that. But just it goes to show you that there's something to that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with people that I would never imagine to have spoken with about my book, or because of that I'm an author, and now I can say, well, I've written 4 books. And so there is so much power here. And even if you are making full use of every digital thing you can possibly imagine, having that asset in place is so powerful, because there are people who still love the physical, tactile book.
I'm one of them.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I've got my highlighter, Yeah,
Okay.
can't read a book without this.
Right, totally. Yeah, I've my none of my books are flat because they're all dog-eared. Right, it's just like whamp, But what's so funny too is that in this multifaceted digital age that we're in, right? I've heard people to say to me, "Ooh, I'm so glad I keep your book on my desk," and if you're not paying attention, pay attention right now, right? That's really important, to be physically present, or an aspect of you to be physically present with your ideal clients, strategic partners. Like, you're literally on their desk. Most everything else is in their phone or on their computer for most of us.
Right.
Even those of us who do like, books,
Right.
physical books these days. So there's
Right.
that funny aspect. Funny. There's a much better word for that, but it's a powerful thing to remember that for as much VR and as virtual reality and as much of everything digital that you can do, which some of the tools are fantastic, right? Some of the capabilities fantastic, and our ability to share our message with people, absolutely fantastic.
Right. Right.
And right, don't close the door on the book, right? And was it Charlene? I didn't catch your session, but I think Dumont was saying, like, you talked about, right, 100 ways to, or 100.
Oh, that was Cindy.
Oh, Cindy, thank you. Thank you very much. So Cindy, right, Cindy Holbrook, thank you. Right, same thing applies with, yes, yes. The same thing applies to your book, right? And having that, that gold mine of content. I teach my people, that there are 40 to 50 different offshoots of your book that you can make without necessarily having to create so many things, right? Like, sure, if you're going to make a video from some text, yes, you got to make that video, but you have the entire curriculum of your stuff right there for you.
Yeah,
Right?
and I think that's so important and so valuable for all of us to understand. I wondered, Ben, if you would talk a little bit about something that has been in my face when it comes to writing a book, and that is just how do you even get started on this path? Because to me it just seems like huge.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate you saying that, because most people do think it's huge, right? It's kind of like the, you can see this much of the iceberg,
Yeah.
right? And the 90% is down below the water, and that's what's going to take you out,
Right?
right? That kind of thing, and it makes sense that most people think that. I mean, I thought this for many years, like, oh my God, a book, I can't even imagine, and then, oh my God, publishing, I can't even imagine that, right? So what's really fantastic for folks like us, you, me, everybody on this call, everybody who's catching this and recording, I should say, on this summit, everybody who's catching this and recording, is that it's so much easier to write a book, create a book than ever before. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not hard sometimes. I'm not making things up of like, oh, it's a snap, but it's so much easier these days from, in terms of logistics and technology and the capabilities that we have as individuals, with things like self-publishing, and let me qualify that, professional self-publishing, right? Do not self-publish your own book. Hire a professional, right? Do not fix your own toilet. Do not fix your own electric, right?
Hire the gas.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm gonna use that one going further, Damon. Thank you. But yeah, we have so many more opportunities, and I'll talk more about them in a moment. But the thing that stops most people with their books is what stops most people from most things, right? It's the myths, the myths, the misunderstandings, and the misperceptions that people have about things, right? We think one way about something for, not your fault, or that you're thinking this way, but it's your responsibility if you want to do something about it, right? So you start with, how do you debunk the myths? How do you transform the false beliefs and really see what's possible with a book? So that's one part of it for me is, debunk the myths. And the other part is, who the heck is your audience? Who are you serving?
Yeah.
Right? And shocking, right? It keeps coming back to that. Whether it's a book, a business, a podcast, a TV talk show, whatever those things are. Because if you know who you serve and what they want and how you can help them, then there's no such thing as like writer's block.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can have writer's block maybe for a novel. Sure, I've not written a novel yet. I hope next year to write my first novel. But, as far as a nonfiction book, something that's helping our business, serving the people we serve, no such thing as writer's block. Right? And I'm not even talking theory here. I'm saying, hey, if you want to make sure if you want to prove what I just said and test it for yourself, have conversations with your ideal clients about the book you're writing as you're writing it. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is a big mistake that a lot of people make because they don't do this. They're like, I'm an expert. I know my stuff. And, it helps people and people love it. And that can all be true. I'm not denying that. But bringing that expertise and that wisdom into the space of a book, it requires a couple of things. And, first and foremost is, hey, what do your people need right now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you might know what they need, right? Because yes, you're the expert, you've integrated all these things, you've worked with all these people for, however many years or decades, and what do they need right now? And what is the language that they're using to describe that need right now? That's why you talk to them.
Exactly.
Hey, what are your biggest challenges and goals and, all that kind of, marketing type questions. But when you speak to somebody, about the book you're writing, right, it's not like, hey, ideal client, let me ask you some questions, about your challenges so you can be worried that I'm going to try to sell you something in about 20 minutes, right? Completely different conversation is, hey, I'm writing a book about a topic that we both care about, and I'd love to write a great book. Would you be willing to chat with me for 20 minutes so I can do that? Right? And
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really powerful. So I think right there is such a starting point. And I'm sorry, Demont, what were you going to say?
No, I was just saying that, that hearing it out of the horse's mouth is just, is just so important. But I also have found that people, when you do that, people expect a sales pitch at the end of it. Have you had that experience? It's like, well, now it's time to sell me the book. I'm listening.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, the right, the integrity of the call or the conversation is really important, right? Because you're not suddenly going to sell them something, right? But you can bridge, in your wrap-up question of, hey, after I do the book, I'm going to do X. Would you like to come hear more about that in the future? That's fine.
Yeah. That's a different thing.
Exactly. And stays in integrity. If they say yes, great. If they say no, great. Like and you can move forward from there. So that's really my foundational piece, and my clients. I am grateful to them for their patience, because over and over again, I say to them, well, are you talking to your people? What are your people saying? And sometimes they know, and sometimes they don't, or sometimes, not that I'm trying to be a pain in the butt, but I am.
Well, and I think something that Anka hit on in the last session was people don't always know exactly what it is that they want.
Yeah.
And if we don't know how to ask for it or define it, then we don't know how to ask for it. Yeah. And therefore we don't get what we need. And I think, I heard that kind of in your words too. We think we know it all. And maybe we do. But it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to put it in a book and make it readable and make it effective.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that so much, because there is an art and a science to writing an effective book, an effective nonfiction book that helps position you as an expert, helps share your message, tell your story, right? And it helps you attract the right clients and strategic partners. Like that, there is an art and a science, because most people, no offense to your book, no offense to my book, right? But most people aren't going to read your whole book. Even if they love it, they are not going to read your whole book. They're going to skim, they're going to scan. They might go to the table, or there's a high likelihood they'll go to the table of contents, which,
and then they'll take their
yes, and then they'll like skip over to chapter 7 because they're like, I want to read that thing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And you know, that is so true. And I think we talked about this at one time, because I said, you know, the table of contents is your friend.
Yes.
Because I don't read an entire book at a time. And I think that's the point you're making. I read a chapter at a time. And I remember you saying to me, okay, you're not talking about writing a book. You just have to think of the chapter. All you have to do is write one chapter. And that makes it so much more, it seems so much more doable.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It really is. I mean, the way I do it with my clients is, you know, I give them a blueprint for the entire book, and I break down the book into basically 15-minute working sessions for them.
That's
great. Yeah, so it's, you know, hey, don't worry about the whole book. You don't even have to start at the beginning, but just, you know, treat this one part. Like, for example, why is your book right on time and important in the world?
Yeah.
Right that. And you know, the way I like to help them optimize that, you know, creation of that content is to actually use that blueprint in conjunction with dictation. Yes, yeah, and it doesn't mean the whole book has to be dictated, right? This is very important, but dictation is a really, really powerful tool, and you know, y'all who are listening, it doesn't just have to be for the book, right? But dictation is a beautiful way to bring your authentic voice into text, because you're not writing and, oh, is this the right word? And you know, you're not judging.
Yeah, I get that academic speak trying to drill through, and censorship. I censor myself. And you told me this one time, Ben. You mentioned this, and I don't know whether you knew, but coming back from California one time, I broke 2 fingers on my hand, and so they had to bind it. So I'm there. I can't type. I've got things that are due. So I started dictating. I said, well, Ben said to dictate, and you know what? My writing got better.
Yes.
It got so much better, because I was telling stories and I was talking in my own voice, and it just became more natural. So that's a great tip.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. I'm sorry about your fingers. Thank you for saying that.
It's okay now. They all work.
Yes, good. Fantastic. Yeah. And what I've discovered is, you know, if you're an expert in your stuff, which most of us are, if not all of us who are catching this content, you can dictate 1,200 words in about 7 minutes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and 1,200 words is 4% of a 25,000 word book.
Wow, that's a great way to think of it. Yeah, that's not nearly as intimidating.
Right.
And it also, I can see where, you know, having that outline and then doing the recording or the dictation, it just seems like it would flow so easily. Okay, so for the next 7 minutes, I'm going to talk about, you know, why it's important that people know this at this time.
Yes.
And that makes so much sense to me, because I know that I think through things when I'm dictating too. I'm thinking through what I'm saying, you know, so that's another benefit of it.
Yeah, it really is. I'm a big oral processor, as some people say, just in general, and I find that works really well with my book. My books.
Yeah. So that is just that really is helpful, Ben, in terms of trying to understand, you know, how we even get started. Because I think for me, the most intimidating thing that I have to face every week, and I do it on Saturday mornings, because then I can put it off all week and just do it on Saturday. No, my husband sleeps late on Saturday, so that's the perfect time to be working on it. But now I forgot what I was going to say about it. Um,
Dictation.
yeah, it was, I know. It just makes it so easy because then I can allot that time.
Yes.
Because so many of us, we run into one of the biggest blocks is, I only have a half an hour this morning.
Right.
Well, that's 2 chapters, right?
Right.
2 of those sections.
2 sections. Yep.
Yeah. So that just makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm certain that when I tell my husband about it, he's going to be really excited about it. So that just makes it so much more simple and so much more doable. So I'm wondering, you take people through a process, I think. How does that work?
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of what we're talking about today. First and foremost, helping the person dial in, who's their ideal client, who's their audience. Whether they don't quite know that already or they know, but how can we provide a little bit more clarity? So I, want to get them oriented toward the person that they're serving, right? And then from there, get them set up to have those conversations, with minimum 10 to 20 people, right? And more can be better, certainly, because more data, more opportunity, to cultivate clients just from those conversations.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yep.
Yeah, use that book because that will open up those kinds of conversations.
Exactly, and that when I think a lot of us, myself included, for many years as an entrepreneur, right? We see all these things online, and everybody and their mother has a strategy about doing this, and this, and so many of those strategies, they work. Right, they totally work. Right, people aren't. Well, I can't speak for everybody, but most people that I'm seeing, right, they're selling legit stuff that works for them. Processes, frameworks, whatever that is, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right? And it doesn't mean it's going to work in the way that it works for that person. About it, so to eliminate that noise, right, is a big part of that. Is having the conversations, right? Because then, whatever you're going to do strategically, like if you're going to do a bunch of social media, if you're going to do, press releases, if you're going to do a podcast, right? Like whatever those things are, just having that foundation is really, really important. And, it's so easy not to do what I'm saying. Because it's the unsexy stuff. It's the unexciting, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, woohoo! And this part is, can be a drag, or it can appear to be a drag. Right? And I really want to, encourage everybody to think about this, because there's so much power in, for all of the reasons I've described, to speaking to your, best potential ideal client, and to be a listener to that person, to be an active listener to and for that person, because so many people, sad to say in this world, they don't get listened to enough. Right? So imagine just giving somebody that gift of listening and getting all this great information, and then you get to the end and they've, bared their soul, so to speak. And then you're like, hey, I can
Nice
help.
talking to you.
Right. Yeah. And that what is going to keep coming up here for me, and I'll put a word to it now, is relationships, right? People are like, oh, I'm going to do a book launch because I'm going to sell a bunch of books and get a bunch of clients. Great, But at the core, it's about relationships, right? Developing relationships, connecting with people, using the book to have a reason to talk to folks.
Okay.
And for people to think you know what you're talking about. You look at anybody who wants to bring public speaking, whether it's online, on stage, or both, into the mix, if you're thinking about that for your own business, right? You have to have a book. I mean, you don't have to, but if it's you and somebody else and they have a book,
and you don't,
and you don't, the decision makers are going to look a little bit differently at the book person, because they have a book. Right, and the book implies that you have a framework or a method or pillars or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I can write a book called The Lucrative LinkedIn System.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and Dumont, thank you for saying that, because so many times it's like, oh my God, my book is, what am I going to write? What am I going to write? Well,
And then it's like, oh my gosh, what I've been doing all this time.
exactly, and then just using, so you have a bunch of content that you can put in your book, right? And then just going back to using the conversations with people as the lens to help clarify that content.
Oh, that makes so much sense, Ben.
Yeah.
It really does. And I think just about everyone who has spoken has in some way talked about doing that research to find out what it is that people want and need, and hearing it in their words.
Yes.
So that you can respond to that. And that has been mentioned over and over again.
Good.
And I know that I first learned it from a certain leader that I follow, and I know that you've heard from him too. And he talks about, really needing to plug into what people need, what they want, what they're frustrated about, angry about, what they want to learn, all of those things. And I've been doing those. I've done several rounds of those, actually, because I keep going back and fixing and revising and doing all those things.
Yep.
And every time I hear different things.
Yes.
I hear different things. And what you were saying about listening, I'm just going to piggyback on that a minute, because one of my first careers was in HR, and I was working for a military contractor. My dad had worked for a military contractor, so that must be a great place to work. And this particular contractor was never the first in the market. They would take somebody else's. They wait for someone else to develop something, and then they do it better. I mean, that was their model. That was how they worked.
Sure.
And their whole campaign one year was, I'll call it Charlie. Charlie listens. And that was so powerful, because you're right. We don't feel like we're listened to. We don't. I mean, even in relationships with our friends or our family, how many times do we think we heard what they were saying?
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, we're, the whole human experience and communication, and what is it? George Bernard Shaw said the biggest, I'm going to butcher this quote slightly, and I apologize, George, as he's rolling over in his grave, but, something like the biggest misunderstanding about communication is that it's actually happened, right? And it's like, and I mean, I'm not such a pessimist that I believe in fully, but I think
it is that.
A lot of it is that, though. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and all you have to do is watch, something on TV, to see this, people going off and thinking they totally understood one another. I had that happen 4 years ago with a relative, where I thought we had this understanding, and I ended up sitting in an airport by myself. So getting that clarity and letting people know you're listening, that's so powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And I want to bridge, because I just saw a question in the comments from Audrey. My book is technically done when adding an FAQ section, right? Frequently asked questions, with answers, be worth adding. So, Audrey, it certainly can be, and that can be very effective. And here's where the magic comes in, and this is for everybody, not just Audrey, right? The function of your book, Audrey's book, my book, Dumont's book, right? Everybody's book. The primary function of your book is not to give the people a bunch of information. Is not to give people a bunch of information. You're not writing a textbook unless you're writing a textbook.
Yeah.
Okay? Textbook is fine, but do not do that. The most important thing I like to think of, the 80-20 rule, like Pareto's principle, right? 80% of your book, right? You want it to be geared on helping the reader to shift their beliefs and perspectives into what's possible. Right? Because you can give them all the information you want, but if they don't believe that they can do it, it doesn't matter what you tell them. This is so, so important, right? Like back at the beginning of this, this conversation, I talked about, unpacking, debunking the myths and the false beliefs and stuff like that. That's what you need to do first with your people, with your book. So Audrey, going back to your question, yes, you can do FAQ section, but be careful about, do you want to give them a bunch of answers? And you want to give some answers for sure, right? Absolutely give value. I'm all about value. And make sure that the value's in like the 20% space, right? And that the shifting of beliefs and perspectives is in that, that 80% space. And, that Audrey, one thing you can think about is if you answer a question for somebody, fantastic, but make sure that your answer shows them the gap to what they still need to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right, really, really important. Right, well, hey, I want to, how do I lose weight? Okay, well, you need to exercise, right? But then, make sure but make sure to exercise in a way that, is good for your lifestyle and your heart and stuff like that. I can show you how to do this on my next workshop, or, that really important, right? Every time you offer a solution, reveal the next problem, right? Because almost every solution opens up a gap for the next problem to be solved. And that's really, really important, right? And that, if we try to just give people all the answers in the book, right? A couple things can happen. One is that we put too much information in the book and it's dense and overloaded and people can't deal with it.
Right.
And that's one problem or one challenge. The other one is the false sense of closure that you can give to people. Meaning that, hey, look at this, there's so many answers in this book. I can do everything by myself. And that's fine for a couple of people, because there are a couple of people who can take what you teach and run with it and, actually do something with it. But most people can't.
Yeah.
Right? And this is not a criticism of most people, right? But what you want to do is make sure that you're not giving that false closure, because the people that we serve, most of us serve, right? We're going to serve them better. We're going to provide a real transformation the more they hang out with us. Mm-hmm. And if they're just hanging out with us in the book and not even necessarily reading the whole book, how are we going to really serve and provide real transformation that's going to last, for X amount of time in their life, in their business, hopefully forever.
Yeah.
Right?
Can one book do that, though? I mean, that seems like...
Right, exactly. I mean,
there was the Bible. They sold a whole bunch of copies. But,
they did sell a lot of copies, yes.
But that even takes, you have to read more than just the front page. So.
Exactly, yeah. And the what I like about this is I'm a how do I say this without sounding disparaging of myself? I'm a very lazy person. In my accomplishments, like, I want to tear it up and help a bunch of people and do a bunch of great things, and I want to make it as easy and straightforward as possible, right? Like, you drop the rock in the water, the rock finds the fastest way to the bottom, right? This kind of idea. Yeah.
Ripples, yeah.
Yeah. So don't overdo it with the book. And This I found tricky with my first book, actually my second book, because I felt like I was really kind of pulling my punches and just kind of skimming the surface, and I was like, wow, there isn't really much substance in my book. Are people going to really like it? Am I really serving them? And then I got all this feedback. I'm like, Ben, this is amazing. Like, I didn't know these things, and because most people don't know what we know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We assume they do.
Yes. So we speak on that, on the periphery or on that first level. And to us, that's the stuff that, we're mumbling in our sleep.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's so second nature to us. And for other people, it's completely mind-blowing. And you don't have to go far to blow somebody's mind.
Yeah.
Right, which is fantastic, because all you just, you show them what's possible, right? That's one of the greatest gifts, is show people like you can do this too.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I think particularly in something like writing a book, or maybe a screenplay, or something where other people are going to be digesting this, it's intimidating. It's
Mm-hmm.
intimidating, I think, to all of us. And it's also, I think we can make it harder than what it is. That's just my mind saying that. And talking about complicating, oh my gosh, I can make anything complicated,
Yep, understand.
and I can make it more complicated the next day if you want.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny. It's like I mean, I think there's lots of reasons that we can do these kinds of things. For me, I one of the things that, not so much anymore, but I really struggled with perfectionism for many years. Right, got to make it epic. Right, and that doesn't mean that I don't want to do a great job, but it doesn't have to be epic.
Yeah.
Because you, me, people on this call, right? Chances are that, like, when we're operating at 80%, if you will, right, it's like the rest of the world's like 130, 140%.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean don't do a great job, and let that go, get it out the door, to get feedback, to get get understanding.
Yeah. What is that they always say? What's better than perfect? Done.
Yes.
Done is better than perfect.
Done is better than perfect.
Yeah, I should have that embroidered on pillows.
Right.
I'm going to have so many pillows because I keep telling people I'm going to do all this embroidery. And chances are it's not going to happen. But if I decide to do that, then I'm going to put I'm going to embroider the name of your book on.
Oh, right on. Thank you. I like it. I'd like a pillow. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Glenn, Lynn, Ben. I knew you were one of those.
Yep.
The whole process, I think, can seem like an awfully big step for us. And I wonder if there's, it just seems overwhelming, is what it seems like. And all the pieces and parts you talk about, writing the book is one thing, but getting it published and getting it edited and the graphics and, just all that stuff. How do you suggest to people that they kind of get rid of that overwhelm?
Yep.
That seems to be it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to go back to the iceberg analogy for a moment. I have noticed over the years, in working with authors and also chatting with a bunch of people who potentially want to write books and understanding their challenges, Dumont, what you said before, like the things that surprise you, is like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I had all these conversations. I probably had at one point, for one of my things, that I probably had 65 conversations. Right, spoke to 65 people over, several weeks. That was a pain in the butt, but it was fantastic, because what I discovered was that most people, what scares the heck out of them is the publishing, even though they can't always even articulate that. Right, so they haven't even written the book yet, and they're like, I don't know about. It's so hard to write a book and it's overwhelming, and they can't even put the words on, but what about the publishing? But the publishing is often the thing that scares the heck out, right? That's that 90% under the water. And what I say is a couple of things, and for y'all to keep in mind. Traditional publishing, right? Do not do traditional publishing. This is really important for most of us. Like 99% of us do not do traditional publishing. Right? Traditional publishing, nothing's wrong with traditional publishing, right? Like if you have a tremendous following, or if like you have a TV show and it makes sense to have like a big name publisher or something like that, maybe there's a strategic reason, that's fine. Right? But people like you and me, the professional self-publishing, what I mentioned before, is really important, right? Because with a traditional publisher, they own your book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, you sign the contract. You have signed away your intellectual property for the
Oh my
book.
gosh.
You have signed away creative control of the book. You might have input, but if they're like, nah, we don't like that
Oh
idea
my
for the
gosh.
cover, we're going to do this, right? And if you dig in, it makes kind of sense, right? Traditional publisher, their business model is to sell a bunch of books,
Hmm.
right? So they're going to, gamble, if you will, on books that they think are going to have a great return, and that's fine, right?
Sure.
But for people like us, right? Do you want the traditional publisher, taking royalties from your book? Probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah, and not every publisher, because I can't speak about every publisher, but there are lots of publishers, traditional publishers, where you have a contractual obligation to sell X amount of books in X amount of time.
Oh,
Okay, so let's say, for example, you have to sell 4,000 books in 2 months.
that's
Okay,
a lot of books.
that is a lot of books, right? And let's say you sell 2,000 of them. The remaining 2,000 books, by contract, you have to buy back from the publisher.
Gosh.
Wait for it. At retail,
Oh my.
right? So what is that? $40,000 that you owe the publisher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy talk, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you have to get an agent if the publisher doesn't take direct submissions. Maybe you have to write like a 35-page book proposal. It's like, why would you not just write the freaking, pardon my language, book and leverage it and get it out there and use it in all the ways you want to use it?
Absolutely, Ben.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that that was the case.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal.
It is a really big deal. Yeah, and different publishers, different rules, right? Like, I'm not trying to vilify all of traditional publishers.
And that's interesting because we had Shadid Al-Azhar on last night, and he was
Yeah.
talking about licensing, content licensing,
Hmm.
and how they do that. And I can think of, I've been in universities all my life.
Yeah.
You have all those books you have to buy. Is that done differently? Is it a different process?
I don't know too much about licensing,
Okay.
but I would think that if you've signed away your intellectual property, like, unless the publisher's like, yeah, the licensing is a good idea, how are you going to make the choice to actually do the licensing of your own content?
Yeah, that makes, yeah. And, it was just this whole, it's been interesting in this summit. I did it because I wanted to do something about, the digital marketing and what's new in it. And it seems so overwhelming to many of us. But I've learned so much.
Yes. Yeah.
I have sat here and I have listened to some amazing presentations, yours included. And it's just been I'm getting an echo here. I think I've got two mics going.
Okay.
Anyway, Ben, I saw this. Yeah, hear that echo? You're not hearing it. I'm hearing it.
Okay.
That's fine if it's just me.
Okay.
Audrey asked if you would give us the name of your book again, the one that's coming out.
Oh, yeah, sure. So let me see if I can
If you want to dictate, I'll just type it in.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So the influencers formula, and influencers without an apostrophe.
Oh, I just put the apostrophe in
I know.
there. Okay, hold on. Let me.
Yep.
Influencers
formula. Yep. How to create a global thought leadership masterpiece using a podcast, book, or TV talk show.
I may not get all of this. And I misspelled thought leader. I made it one word. Okay, thought leader.
Yep.
Okay, how to create a global thought leader.
Thought leadership masterpiece with a podcast, book, or TV talk show. Right, and spoiler alert, or semi-spoiler alert, the process is pretty much the same. Have conversations with people about your book, or your podcast, or your TV talk show.
Well, I definitely misspelled most of this, but a masterpiece.
A masterpiece, yep.
Yeah, and leadership is not two words. Okay. I need new glasses is what I need. Anyway, Ben, you have given us so much to think about. And I also know that you have something that I've actually found really helpful. And that's your testimony or your
My template. Yeah. So if you're not already doing this, whether or not you have a book, but it's really, really important to get reviews and testimonials for your stuff. Vitally important. There's that term social proof, right? We want social proof. We want other people to be saying good things about us, right? So I have a wonderful template that you can use because very often you may have had this experience. You reach out to somebody, you're like, hey, can you write me a testimonial? And then it's like, and then you hear nothing. And it's not that the person doesn't want to give you a testimonial. It's just they get busy and they get sidetracked. And
they don't know how to start. And
yeah, all the things. So I have this testimonials template. So you write the testimonial for the person. And then you send it and you say, hey, I would love a testimonial. I know you're super busy. I wrote this. So you can either bless it, edit it, or write your own. Thank you so much. And what a game changer.
That's a great idea. I remember having to say something like that to students when they were nearing graduation. I'd say, you're going to need a letter of recommendation. Yeah. And they go, yeah. Especially if they sat in row 500 every class.
Yes.
But I would say, do them a favor and, at least put down some pertinent information, and kind of write it for them because that's going to make it easier.
Yeah, it really will. Yeah, so that's available at bookreviews.cc. Once again, bookreviews, plural.cc.
Book reviews. And it's spelled reviews. I can't see here, so that's got .cc?
.cc, yes, please.
Let's see if that's right. I don't know if I did that right.
Missing an I, but almost there.
Okay, so we're just gonna go with it.
Yes,
we'll go with it. Folks, spell it better than I did. So then this is you're always so informative, and that's why I keep asking you, asking you back, and I'm wondering if anybody has any questions that we have not asked you yet. So I wanted to give people a chance to get those in, but I also just wanted to tell you what an inspiration you have been to me.
Thank you.
Starting with, I remember the first time I was going to have you on, I figured, I better go buy one of his books and figure out what this guy's all about. And I think when you went on, when you started, I said, you have this great story. Tell us this, And I don't know how much you got to actually talk, but you are always so informative, and I think you make things so much easier for us. To understand. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
And I'm checking to see. Audrey said she got it. So
thank you, Audrey.
We're good. I think we're good. Ben, and if you have any questions, I happen to know that Ben does answer his email.
I do. It's true.
So thank you so much, Ben. This has been so helpful. And I will talk to you again very soon, particularly about the book, because I'm serious about that.
Right on. I'm happy to hear that for you. Yeah, no, and Dumont, it's my pleasure. And I just want to say one last thing in all of this, right? Because the overwhelm of the book, keep in mind, everybody keep in mind, you can do so many things with your book before you publish it. Just by having conversations about the book. Right? Just keep having.
That's what you said the first time I ever talked to you, and I hadn't realized. You've got all that leveraging you can do ahead of time.
Yep. All that content.
Thinking about writing a book on such and. That is such a great idea. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, and you have the content and all those kinds of things. So, publishing, yes. But it can be over there, and you don't have to wait to make things happen until the book is published. So.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That is so helpful, and like I said, you've been a real inspiration to me. In fact, some of the little tips you've given me over time have really helped me, including
Good.
the Buddha
Oh,
smile.
yes, everybody smile.
The Buddha smile. So thank you so much. Everybody,
pleasure.
we're going to be back shortly. Ben, I'm going to say goodbye and get ready for our next wonderful guest. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Damon. Thanks, everybody. Take good care.